Rike is one of those companies that, for one reason or another, seems to always get lost in all of the noise of today's knife world. I often speak on the fact that our little corner of the internet is growing at such an alarming rate that it's easy to overlook certain brands and manufacturers, no matter how good they are. Now, Rike is a Chinese manufacturer of some seriously insane and seriously well-made knives, and if you thought the stuff coming out of We and Best Tech and the other big Chinese brands was crazy, well, you literally have no idea. Rike is like We and Best Tech's crazy cousin who always shows up to family reunions, already hammered, but everyone still loves him because, after all, he is family. Every family's got one, either a cousin or an uncle that, shows up pissed drunk and goes on and on about wild conspiracy theories and or claims to have been abducted at least once. Maybe that's you, I don't know. No judgment here. But in the case of Rike, when he sobers up, he's an absolute genius, and he's been able to put out some truly remarkable pieces. Pieces, for example, like this. The Rike Knife Knight, a full-size titanium frame lock flipper that is as wild-looking as it is impressive. It's like the designers got to work, and 6 months later, they were still designing it. Then when the design got sent down to the shop floor for machining, they decided to go wild and added a few more things on top of the original design that had been redesigned. This thing is over-machined to a level I do not think I've ever seen, and especially not in this price range. And honestly, that is something of a common theme in Rike's knives. Over-designed and over-machined. But the end product is always outrageous and always mind-blowing. And to be perfectly honest, as wild as the Knight is, this is one of their more, dialed-back models. They didn't quite take it all the way up to 11 on this one, maybe 10 or a 10.5 at most. The titanium scales are skeletonized, to say the very least, if that's not made violently clear by these 3 gaping cutaways on either side, and the scales are finished with these very subtle milling lines that look really nice. They don't really add any kind of grippiness or texturing, but they look good. The minimal hardware here is anodized blue, and that shiny blue pivot bears the RK logo, just in case you forgot who made the knife you bought and paid for. But it's a good look overall. On the lock bar side, we are met with this surprisingly simple and straightforward milled titanium pocket clip with the ceramic ball on the end. It carries decently enough, but it's a little tight coming in and out of the pocket, at least, so far in my experience. There is a pretty substantial lanyard hole cut through the backspacer, and the backspacer is an immense slab of titanium that covers about 80% of the back spine of the handle. And at the tail end of the knife handle, it's got some serious jimping for some extra traction. And stamped in Rike's unfortunate curly Q cursive font near the flipper tab is the number 144. So the knife is numbered. Not sure 144 out of how many, I have no idea. But there it is, it's a thing. Opening this massive, otherworldly looking knife up, and we're met with this nearly 4-inch long bead-blasted drop point style blade done up in N690CO, which is an okay blade steel with really great rust resistance, really easy to sharpen, but it tends to fall short on the edge retention department. You can't have it all. We've got this little cutaway for the deployment slots, and a really nice sized finger/sharpening choil, and an interesting compoundish grind towards the tip. And opening this up, you get a better feel for how long this piece is, around 8.6 inches long opened up. Overall, the looks are wild, but again, as far as Rikes go, this is pretty mellow, and I picked it up because it's something different, and it's way out of the box, without being absolutely outrageous. Again, as far as Rike's line goes, it's semi-reasonable. It's a nice aesthetic balance, to me, is what I'm getting at. Now then, moving on to the action, this behemoth is running on bearings, and when it first arrived, fresh out of the box, it was pretty stiff and slightly unsatisfying, if I'm being honest. Thankfully, after a few weeks of non-stop flipping and fidgeting, the action is broken in extremely well. Like the Rike Toulet I previously reviewed, the flipper tab on the Knight is this rounded and jimped gear thingy, but it's super comfortable and extremely easy to get a hold of. The D10 is okay, you can fail the flip, but only if you're going out of your way to do so. But the D10 is a little softer for a reason. Those big deployment slots on the blade open up a world of fidgeting fun. Reverse flicks are a breeze, and they're nice and snappy. Same goes for the thumb flicks, although I've noticed some thumb soreness from that edge. There's that inner edge on the top of the deployment slot there. It digs in, they didn't knock it down. The lock bar is easy to get a hold of for closing, and thanks to the immense heft of that blade, it swings shut real nice and smooth. Overall, a fun action, really fidget-friendly thanks to the multiple deployment modes. No excess grit or noise from the bearings, it's just a smooth operator overall. The ergos are also pretty nice overall. This knife being as long as it is, you've got tons of room to get comfortable on the handle. The pocket clip, you don't even know it's there. Choking back, that flipper gear works really well as a stop to keep you from slipping forward. And choking up with that big finger choil is nice and comfy, and it gets you right up behind the blade for more intricate cutting tasks. The jimping is done well all around, but I would have liked to see a little more on the blade spine. We only get these 3 little notches, and honestly, in hand, you would never know they're there. And they're really not helpful. Overall, it's a really nice piece in hand and in use, which to me is a pleasant surprise considering how insane it looks. And the cutaways, all the crazy lines and the jagged edges, it looks rough, but it's just a big softie. Solid ergos. And finally, that blade, that big gnarly bead blasted blade, out of the box it was relatively slicey. Nothing mind-blowing, but slicey enough for most basic EDC tasks. And that flat grind is done decently well, but it only comes about 80% up the way of the blade, and it's a relatively short blade height-wise, so behind the edge it's still pretty thick. Not anything close to what I would call a laser beam. I have had to sharpen and strop this one a couple times in the past 3 weeks or so, but that comes down to the blade steel. It's not a bad steel by any means, I'm just a sucker for steels that require little to no maintenance. Because I'm lazy. The blade style is interesting in and of itself. The main cutting edge is pretty much completely straight until it meets the nicely done compound tip. So it's almost like a weird twist on a drop point fused with a compound ground Tonto tip, but it's not a Tonto tip because it's not straight too. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. At any rate, it cuts well enough and looks really nice. Even if it isn't a hollow ground Spyderco, it's slicey enough for most any EDC task, even though in the footage that you're watching right now, it's probably a video of me struggling because I've dolled it up and I forgot to sharpen it before recording this. Anyway, at the end of the day, where does all this leave me with the Rike Knife Knight, aka the RKK NIGHTG? The looks, the materials, the machine work, and the build quality are all top-notch. No doubt about it, Rike's build quality and QC are grade A, and here's the best part. All of this milled insanity can be had for $132. This is a whole lot of titanium and a whole fartload of machine time and millwork for $132. So if you're into the looks and the lines and the cyborg cyberpunk aesthetic, this is a great option. That being said, that blade steel and the slightly thicker blade has been a slight turnoff for me, at least in use. As much as I love carrying this knife, and as much as I love playing with it and fidgeting with it, I don't exactly love cutting things with it. And at the end of the day, fidgetiness and looks aside, a knife is a tool made to cut things. So, take that for what you will. I think it's an excellent showcase for Rike's insane machine work, and it's a great price. But all things considered, I like this a whole lot more with a thinner edge and a slightly better steel. So until next time, thank you for watching. Bye-bye now.